Listen, you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of your favorite new podcast entitled We Hate You, Internet! Okay, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. Every time I do the intro, it's funny to me every time. I love it every time. This is We Hate You, Internet. You know what I'm saying? We're here live in the Panorama Brand Studios in Houston, Texas. It's Houston's premier podcast studio. And as I said already, this is We Hate You, Internet. It's an episode, an internet podcast that is fun yet informative. We highlight some of the negative effects of the internet on our lives, as well as celebrate the beautiful simplicity of our humanity. I'm Wilford Hamilton, your host. Sitting alongside me is the oh so fresh with the ice white kicks.
So fresh, so clean.
Straight up. Her name is
Miss Clara Aguirre. No, okay.
Miss
With an intro like that, you know, I had to come with it.
Miss Clara Aguirre is in the building. Oh, shucks. Listen, man. Okay, so off the rip, this episode, I'm feeling a little giddy, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure where we're going to go with this, but we're going to just ride the wave. So today we're going to talk about, ironically, we're going to talk about intelligence, right? And the title you'll see when you see it on the screen is Intelligently Ignorant, right?
I like that title.
It's kind of dope, huh? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And basically what we want to kind of deal with is the effect of the internet on human intelligence. It's a really interesting topic because I want to start with like my definition of intelligence. And so it's one's ability to receive, process, store, and utilize information or input. You know what I mean? Really like, you know, a person's mental capacity. You know, and so when you think about that, right? I think about the amount of information that's available today. Obviously, you know, because the internet, like, listen, our world is wide open. And so anything that's said, recorded, whatever, you can find this stuff on the internet. But when you start talking about a person's intellectual capacity, not only is it the amount of information and the knowledge that is available, but it comes down to the quality of that information. You see what I'm saying? Because we live in a world where misinformation is, I think it's at the highest point that it's ever been in history, because we live in a time where everybody in the world has a voice, and everybody in the world is screaming, and anybody can say anything they want at any time. You know what I mean? And so whereas you used to have to go to a library, pick up a book, and that library is going to vet that information. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to go through a process to be able to have your book published. There used to be a concern or a care for the integrity of the information that you're presenting. But now, like I said, you know, you can get on YouTube, pick up your phone and say whatever you want. And you can sound as factual as you want. And there'll be somebody out there that's going to be gullible enough to believe it. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And as crazy as a proposition as that is, you think about how that affects an individual's intellectual capacity. You know what I'm saying? Like, the ready-made information that we have, people don't have to take the time or spend the energy to actually process information, because, you know what I'm saying, like, you just watch a video. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You type in some words and you have a post. And, you know, we're going to get into it later, you know, you have now AI that's going to tell you whatever you want to hear. And so then how much brain power are you actually using to process this information. And if you're not using brain power, then you lose brain power. I feel that's a good place to kind of settle in. Clara, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah.
Did that make sense to you? I know I just said a whole bunch. But I'm like,
It makes sense.
sense?
It makes sense. It makes
Okay,
sense.
good.
It does. Because I think like now we're kind of in a world where people just regurgitate information and they think that it's like the same as actually having studied this information, being an expert in this information, or having experience in this with this information. It's not the same thing. Just because I can Google something and it'll come up in 5 seconds and I can tell you this answer, it's not the same as me having actually studied this or being a professional in this. It's just not. And I think that we now are like in a position or in a world where people feel as though they can argue these facts because it's everything. You can Google everything, you know? Mm-hmm. And the story I always reference that it makes me laugh whenever I think about it, I remember it's like, I seen it firsthand this week, actually. My my car wouldn't start. My battery had died because it was so hot here. It's like 105 degrees outside.
Madness.
So my car battery didn't start. And I'm outside, and my dad comes out to help me fix it. My brother comes out as well. My dad goes, Claire, turn the car off. Take the keys out, turn the car off. And my brother's like, no, you don't have to do that because we were going to charge the battery. My dad looks at my brother like my brother has two heads. He's like, what? My dad's been working with cars since he was a kid almost, you know? He's been working with cars his entire life.
Shade tree mechanic out here. You know what I'm saying?
His entire life. He knows cars. And my brother's like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, you can leave it as is. Just connect, put the jumper cables. And my dad looks at him, he's like, and he looks at me, he says, turn the car off. He's like, what are you talking about? Turn the car off. He's like, no, you don't have to do that anymore. He was like, I seen it in a YouTube video. And my dad's like, Clara, turn the car off. And I already know, like, I'm going to, obviously, I'm going to trust my dad. Because my dad's, not that my brother doesn't know, my brother knows, but you cannot compare the knowledge with my dad. My dad, he has the experience, the knowledge, the failures to accompany it. You know what I mean? All of it. He knows. He knows what he's talking about. So I turn the car off, and my brother's looking up the Google, like he's Googling it. And then you know that face? I don't know if you've seen it when they Google something and then they're wrong. So he just kind of like tucks the phone away. And because you don't do
face milk.
Exactly. And it's funny because I feel like I see that a lot. Like, people will argue things and they'll get really into it, and it could even be with someone who knows what they're talking about, and they'll Google an answer, and because they're able to like regurgitate that answer, they think that they're kind of on the same playing field, and it's not the same. It's just not the same. There's whatever that individual has, like, in terms of experience and knowledge, it's not like Googling an answer. And then especially with the misinformation out there, you can find an article that tells you the positive effects of dark chocolate, and then you can argue, and you can find another article saying the negative effects of dark chocolate. Like, really, whatever you want to find, you can find. Mm-hmm. It doesn't yield to the same quality of answer with someone who has actually lived it, experienced it, put it to the test. So it just makes me laugh whenever I think of my dad and my brother, like, over here. Then it's just so funny to me. I can't help but smile because I'm like, I just sit there and think, if I had listened to my brother, like, oh my Lord, it's just so funny to me. It's funny to me.
Your daddy over there doing electric boogie.
Hair's just up. I thought I told you.
No. But that story is a prime example of the next point that I want to make, right? Like, as we mature, and we are exposed to different things, our perception evolves and it grows because we've experienced different things, have been exposed to different things. Yeah. So does our intellectual capacity grow? You know what I'm saying? You can take a child, only, like, they can be smart, but for a kid, for a child, but it takes for them to continue to grow and develop their experience and the quality of knowledge they receive in order for them to continue to develop their intellect. You think about a person that like an inmate in prison, right? They go in, they barely graduated high school maybe, or maybe they didn't graduate high school, but they go in and say, hey man, you know what? I got some issues going on with my case. My lawyer didn't do a good job. And so I'm going to learn the legal system and represent myself. And you see this person go from barely being able to read to being able to put a case together, you know what I mean, to fight his case in court. You know what I'm saying? Like I was reading this article, and it's plenty of stories like this. And I'm using it as an example. There was an individual, I believe he was in an Asian country. I can't remember exactly which one, but there was, I believe they were trying to create a power plant or something in the general vicinity where he lived, and he went and he learned all the laws and things regarding that, and fought a case and won in court. He was like a villager though. He wasn't like he didn't go to, he was like a villager. But that goes to show you the ability, like I said, the ability to receive, process, store, and utilize information. You know what I mean? And like a person may not like to read all that much when they're young, but as they continue to exercise their mind, their capacity and their intellectual capacity can grow. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Their ability to process more information, their ability to bring in more information before they start getting brain fog and start getting fatigued. You ever watch a person or a kid try to learn something that's not really interested in learning, and they be like, man, this is like, oh man, how many pages do we have to read? You know what I'm saying? Like you start to get fatigued. Your brain starts to get fatigued. You know what I mean? And everybody's capacity is so different, you know what I mean, as far as but like anything else, just like the body, just like you take a cat that's 115 pounds soaking wet, he can grow his body and build muscle and put on muscle, and if he gets nutrition right and everything, like he can pack on 100 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's the same thing with the mind if you exercise it. But if you eat trash, then it's going to affect the quality of muscle that you can build. Same thing goes with the mind. If you're consuming misinformation, trash information, then it's going to affect the quality and the strength of your mind, right? And so these things, so not only is the quality of the information, we talked about that, but it is also the maturation process of the mind. You know what I mean? It takes time to grow your intellect. Like I said, your brother, he goes on and he looks at it, he saw a YouTube video, like, man, yeah, I know. And he challenges your father, who's been working on vehicles since he was young. You know what I'm saying? And your brother's insight is the things he's been taught. I'm sure your father taught him some things, so he probably has some comfort as far as vehicles are concerned. But it's no way that he's taught him everything that he knows. You see what I'm saying? And the things that he's learned through trial and error. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And these are the things that are underestimated in our time because of the internet and because of how much information people feel like I know because you heard something that you wanted to hear, and then that's why we called it intelligently ignorant, because you think because you heard some information now that you're so smart, you know what I'm saying, but you don't realize how ignorant that you really are.
Yeah, that's so true.
Exactly. But it can work the opposite way, right? If you can be smart enough to understand just how ignorant that you are, and in that process, you can grow.
Yeah,
you can truly become an intellectual. And so, like, and I know that we live in a world where everything wants to be instant. That's one of the major problems. Like I said, we talked about a couple of episodes back, the addiction to conviction, the addiction to convenience. You know what I mean? People don't want to work for things. They want everything to be easy and quick. But like, you can't be smart. You can't be effective without being patient. And like, these things are an issue because we're going to run into a generation, like we talked about this before, and we're going to talk about it multiple times. Like, people's ability to process information is being handicapped. And like you talked about the children's cartoons, how fast they how fast they
change
the scenes, and how they're cutting your attention span down. Like your attention span has to do with your intellectual capability. You know what I'm saying? If you can't focus long enough, then how are you gonna learn anything?
That's true.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so like this is the reason why we're talking about this topic is because like you don't want to have your senses and your intellect dulled. You need to be able to think in order for you to be the best version of yourself. Cause that's what this show is always gonna be about. We if you don't follow us on Instagram, you see all of our posts have "Stay Human" or hashtag "Stay Human." You know what I mean? And the reason why that is because like we are quickly shifting away from what it means to be human in the first place. You know what I mean? Like how human beings actually function. We're getting so far away with all of these additives and technology, all these aids, that you're losing the skills the skills that it takes to the fundamental skills of how to be a human being. You see what I'm saying? How to function as a human being is supposed and designed to function. I kind of stood up on my box a little bit right there, but and I'm gonna pass it back to you. Mm-hmm. But like, that's the challenge and the the challenge that we're facing. You know what I mean? And the threat, I should say, that we're facing in today's time. Like as we continue to move forward, like we need to reserve our ability to think and to continue to grow in our intellect instead of surrendering it so freely in the way that we do. Go ahead, lady.
Yeah, that's very true. You bring up some really good points. Just soaking it all in. But one of the things that comes to mind too as you're speaking, especially when you mention the fact that like someone who is ignorant and they hear something that they want to hear, they think that they're intelligent. In the same way, someone who's intelligent may know that they are intelligent because they know that they're ignorant, right? I don't know. One of the things that comes to mind, and I don't know if this is a little distasteful, but I'm just going to mention it because I feel like it relates. I think about like James Cameron's point of view from the submersible that imploded with the CEO in his perspective. Like they had an image that I saw online of the OceanGate CEO's submarine and then James Cameron's submarine. OceanGate CEO submarine, it looked like a can. It did with some computer screens. They used the PlayStation.
It looked like an empty toilet roll.
It did. It really did. And they even had a bootlegged PlayStation controller to use it. And it's crazy because when they interviewed him, he openly said, "Oh yeah, I did some things that are like unconventional, but I'd like to be thought of as an innovator." Sir, what?
Unconventional is just a synonym for bootleg.
And
I'm sorry, I'm cutting you.
And it's crazy. No, it's true. It's true. These are my thoughts. What you're repeating, like these are things that I'm like, what? Yeah. And then when you compare that to James Cameron, who had a $10 million submersible that they tested, before even sending down there, and even after sending it down there, he's been down there 33 times to the Titanic and survived every single time, had never had the issues that OceanGate had. When you compare the two, like even the way that they speak about their machines, it's completely different. OceanGate CEO is like, yeah, I think I got this thing from Camp World, like one of the pieces that he had inside the submersible. Even the way they speak, and then when I saw James Cameron talk, he said, implosion has always and is always a fear. Like even after being down there, that's something that's always in the back of your mind. Like that's something you're aware of, and it's crazy seeing how these two individuals talk about the same thing, but in very different ways, and because they have very different experience. James Cameron is an expert in the field. He says himself, like, this is a very small community, and they're very like, they keep up with each other. They're constantly in the loop. And had he known that this was like not licensed to even go down there, that he would have spoken against it. But you had an individual who had all the warnings in the world. And he even fired someone who told him, I'm not going to approve this. He fired this individual and said, find me someone else who is going to approve it. That's someone who is who is ignorant. He's choosing to be ignorant because he's seeing the warning signs. He's seeing, okay, this is not a good idea, but he so desperately wants it to be. And it costs him his life and others' lives. So that kind of comes to mind. I know it's a little off track, but it really does come to mind because it makes me think of the fact that, like, you just can't compare the two. Like, experience and knowledge, especially knowledge through mistakes that you've made, and that is like, that's the teacher of all teachers. You can't compare it to, oh, you know what, I want to do this, so I'm going to Google how. And I'm going to, not that he Googled how, but I mean, who knows? I mean, yeah, let's really back a little. But who knows, right? Like, it's different. It's not the same thing. And I think that's something that people need to be careful with, like, especially when it comes to talking about certain topics. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I don't know enough and I want to learn more and learning more. But in order to do that, you have to kind of remove your pride, set it to the side,
Indeed.
The ego to the side,
Indeed.
and be willing to admit to yourself, I don't know enough. You know, I don't know enough and I want to know more. Because there's a difference approaching it that way and saying, I want to do this, I want to be right in this, and let me find the things that are going to justify this. Because now you're being selective. Now you're not actually taking it all as a whole. And what comes to mind, and we always talk about, is like with AI and how that also kind of relates to something like this. And we trust it to be like this thing that is solid fact and truth, but it also has its issues. It also will get information that has nothing to do with what the truth of the matter is. And so that's something that we have to be careful with as well. So I think in order to truly be intelligent, you have to be willing to critically think. Like, don't lose that skill. And if you don't have that skill, learn how to strengthen that skill, because that's, I think, what's going to help you survive and thrive in a world like this. So
I agree. You mentioned something very powerful. You have to tame your emotions in order for you to be able to grow intellectually. Very rarely do you do emotions like untempered. You know what I'm saying? Like, very rarely is that ever going to end good. You know what I'm saying? There's a place for emotion, for passion. You know what I'm saying? But you have to keep it under control. And that leads us to the final point we're gonna make before we start wrapping up. Indoctrination. Like, with all the misinformation that is out in the world, and that's like a major problem that we have in our society, and that's one of those unspoken, tweet people know about it, but they don't really pay attention to it. You know what I mean? Because you saw the show or saw the movie on Netflix, Social Dilemma. Yeah. Right? And they were just talking about how the algorithm for social media is is set up, and how destructive that it is. It's designed to be addictive. You know what I mean? It's designed to give you what you want, but it's really to your ruin. It's not your enemy, but because of the way the algorithm is set up, it gives you more and more of what you want. But once you start to delve into some areas that may not be good for you, it just continues to feed you more and more and more of it. I can think of no worse arena or area where this is displayed in politics. Mm-hmm. Democrat versus Republican, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not even finna jump into that right now. But, whenever you start to kind of like lean toward a side and you start looking on Google for different stuff about the Republican, blah, 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 you start looking at YouTube and you see a post about Democrats say this or Republicans say that, da, 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 da. Then it's going to continue to feed you that information. And before you know it, you become indoctrinated. You know what I'm saying? And you feel you feel so passionate about, and you feel like, I know exactly what I'm talking. I've been researching this, but you've been just watching videos.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
Videos that most likely are not fact checked, and they're biased. You know what I'm saying? And you get put into this bubble where everything around you and everybody that you're listening to and all these chats and all these posts that you're looking at, they all saying the same thing, and all these people are clamoring about the same points. And you start thinking, and this is one of the points they made in the movie, you become indoctrinated to this thought process, and anybody that doesn't agree with you think that they're crazy, because everything that you're seeing and everything that you're hearing and all the information you're receiving is just continually like reinforcing the same idea. Like I said, you're being indoctrinated. You're not learning. You're being indoctrinated. You're being brainwashed.
Yeah,
you know
they're putting you in a little bubble, and that's all you know.
Exactly. And so like, and that's what's happening to a lot of people in our world. As they continue to consume knowledge or information, they think that they're getting smarter, but in actuality, they're being brainwashed. You know what I mean? And then you add, and once again, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's easy, and like people aren't doing the work to look for a fair and honest assessment. They're fueled by their emotions and by the convenience of the information, and they just going down the spiral. Now, you mentioned it, and we're gonna touch on it real briefly. You add AI to the mix, you know what I'm saying? And it's gonna take that effect to the 10th power. You mentioned about how AI kind of works as far as it takes this information from all these different sources all over the internet. You know what I'm saying? Hundreds of thousands, or if not millions of videos, and it starts trying to like bring this information, start bringing it concise and like presenting it in a human way. You know what I mean? But there's a thing called, you can look it up. There's a thing called AI hallucinations, right? Where basically sometimes AI takes information and it starts to it takes information, and like when it regurgitates information back, it gets a hold of some information and just kind of like starts making up facts. I'll give you an example. We talk, you know what I mean? Like, people like, Colonel Sanders, it was a Confederate colonel in the Civil War. He was like, if somebody knows, like, yo, wait, hold on. Ain't that cat that be making that chicken? If you know what I'm saying? If you've been around, you have experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's the cat that made that, the cat with the white goatee that made the chicken.
Yeah.
But, and it does that from time to time. And people, programmers, people that work in AI, they don't know why it does that. They still haven't figured out, like, they try to minimize it. They haven't figured out exactly why that it does that all of a sudden. But the issue and the real problem is that it says it with like 100% confidence.
With certainty, yeah.
Exactly. And so for people that are going to be, it's like people use Siri. Hey Siri, what's the name of that song? Hey Siri, how do I get, what's the name of those shoes? But like you ask in Siri, and it's limited what Siri can do. But you start talking about the chat GPTs and all the stuff that's coming behind it, like, and we talked about this before in past episodes, like people are very comfortable and very trusting of technology, very trusting of AI. You know what I'm saying? People, and it's partly because people don't trust humans that much. You know what I'm saying? We don't trust each other. We're bombarded by so much negativity we see on the internet and on social media about what human beings are doing, and we don't like human beings. You know what I'm saying? So we'll gladly receive information from a robot or AI. And like I said, so the issue with the AI hallucination, it's gonna be a major problem. You know what I mean? And people are not going. They're gonna take it with a mouth wide open, like a newborn bird, like a baby bird, and just pour it in. You see what I'm saying? So, and we gonna wrap this out. I think we got like 1 minute left. We are gonna wrap this down. A couple of seconds. For those that are listening, what you need to do is you need to be smart enough to acknowledge and understand that you're ignorant. There's some things it's always gonna be things you don't know. That's why learning and knowledge and growing and understanding and intellect is a lifelong journey. Mm-hmm. You're always learning. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so be honest and unbiased enough to view any information that you have openly, and be willing to hear, to be able to receive, to process, to store so that you can properly utilize the information that you're receiving. That's the episode for today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that it was helpful. And we always want to leave you with this simple send-off. Stay safe, stay blessed, and above all else, please, stay human. We out.